Hey, everybody, welcome to your Money Map, sponsored by the Alliance for Lifetime Income. I'm your host, Jean Chatzky. Very glad to have you along with me today for what is looking to be a very interesting conversation. As always, we want this to be a conversation. If you're watching, whether you're coming to us over LinkedIn or Facebook or some other way, if you've got a question, if you've got a comment, post it. I am excited to gather your thoughts and to weave them into this conversation with my guest today. For the next half hour or so here, we're going to be talking about something that is changing the world, that's changing each of our lives. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI. And you might be thinking, well, doesn't apply to me. I don't use AI. But here's the thing, you might be tapping into this technology without even realizing it. According to one recent survey, only 33% of people believe they use AI, when in reality, 77% actually do. For those who are helping to plan a vacation, to virtual assistants like Siri and Alexa, the tasks that AI can actually assist with run the gamut. But what about using AI for financial planning? My guest today is here to tackle that question and a number of others related to the use of artificial intelligence in the financial world. Ron Shevlin has been a management consultant for more than 25 years, working all over the globe with leading financial services, consumer products, retail, and manufacturing firms. Today, he is the chief research officer at Cornerstone Advisors. You've also probably read his work in Forbes, where he's a senior contributor. And he's been closely tracking the AI boom and what it means for money management. He's also the author of the book, Smarter Bank: Why Money Management is More Important Than Money Movement. Ron, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Gene. Great to be here.
It's really nice to see you virtually this time, but always good to be with you. You have been reporting on the use of AI in finance, in personal finance, in banking, in the whole financial space for actually quite some time now. Can you walk us through how its use by consumers and institutions has evolved in the past few years?
Sure. I think a lot of people don't even realize it because they never really had the direct connection to it. But artificial intelligence, while it's getting a lot of hype today, first of all, has been around as a technology for 50, 60 years. And really sort of hit the financial services world probably 40-ish years ago when companies like FICO, Fair Isaac Company, everybody's got the FICO score, don't realize that there was more than just a score. They were doing a lot of fraud and risk management back in the early days. And we're actually using artificial intelligence to do fraud analysis and fraud prevention as well as risk management. So that really hit the industry 40-ish years ago. There've
So,
been some, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, when you describe it that way, maybe it would help to just define it. I mean, when you're talking about artificial intelligence, what kind of tools are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm glad you did that, Gene, because I think I had mentioned to you before that I had vowed on LinkedIn a few months ago that I would never use the term AI ever again, because it's an umbrella term that relates to a lot of different types of technologies. And we really need to be a lot more specific about what we're talking about when we use the term AI. So, for example, there are generally a number of different types of technologies or tools that fit under the AI umbrella. One of them being machine learning, which is really a statistical model that really differs from the statistical models that we've used in the past by the fact that there is a feedback loop that continually feeds the model to change it, update it, and calibrate it. And I think that's an example of the early use of AI in fraud management and risk management was really machine learning. More recently, one of the other AI technologies that has really taken hold is conversational AI. And I know a lot of folks listening think, oh, chatbots, I hate those chatbots. Well, guess what? Not all of the chatbots actually use AI technology. Some of them are just rules-based engines that you input a question, it figures out if it has the question in its database, and if it does, it gives you an answer. More sophisticated chatbots use conversational AI to do things like natural language processing to try to understand what is the question that's being asked and apply some intelligence to it. And so while many of you, I'm sure, hate the chatbots that you've been using, and listen, I am at the top of the list of the folks who yell, agent, representative,
Yes.
representative. So, they're getting better. Trust me, they're getting much better. And you've probably been fooled. You probably don't even realize it, but you've probably been fooled thinking you were talking to a real human when you were talking to a chatbot deploying conversational AI. More recently, probably the newest type of AI technology that's hit the world here. It came out at the end of 2022. A tool called ChatGPT, which is technically a large language model, which means it's large because it has literally billions of pieces of input. These large models basically have sucked up everything in the internet, Gene, that has ever been published in the internet, and it sucks it all into its model. Uses conversational AI to understand the question that somebody is asking, but it's called generative AI because basically it generates something. It generates text, it generates voice, but it could generate things like art, it could generate music, it can generate code, programming code, it generates something. And since the end of 2022, when ChatGPT came out, a whole host of competitors like Gemini from Google, a tool called Claude from a company called Anthropic, have all been released and gained some level of popularity and are increasingly being used by not just consumers, but by businesses as well for a wide range of tasks.
One recent study, this one from Forbes, found 43% of people said that they have used AI to get answers, or in your language, to generate answers to their questions about money, their financial questions. What kind of things are people asking about? And are the answers they're getting any good?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll get to the specifics on this, Gene, but it's helpful to remember there's sort of a categorization of questions that people tend to ask. So, for example, there are things like factual things. What happened? Did this happen? When did this happen? Who does this? They're factual things that cannot be disputed because they are facts. There are other questions that are more analytical in nature. Why did this happen? Something like that, or how is this happen? How is this going on? Or things like that. And then there are computational questions, like to basically do mathematical type things. And there's probably other categories of questions. So people are asking questions that fit the various categories. From a financial services, financial management perspective, people are asking, I think, in a various number of categories as well. They're asking a lot, what stock should I buy? That's probably at pretty close to the top of the list. But they're also asking questions, and that's not a factual question. That's much more of an analytical and perhaps even computational question. They're also asking questions like, who's the best at this? Who's got the best checking account? Who's got the best mortgage? Who's got the best fill in the blank product? Or maybe even, who's the best brokerage out there? Who has the best stock management application, program, product, whatever? And those are really difficult questions for a lot of the generative AI models like a ChatGPT and so forth to answer for a number of reasons. First, and not the least of which, is that there are so many different factors that go into that. And in fact, many of the programs now, if you ask it that question, will actually come back and not give you an answer and say, well, we can't answer that because we need to know more about your preferences, your history, and all that kinds of things. And you might be able to actually upload your transaction and investment history for it to analyze. but it's still going to kind of come back and be a little cagey on giving you an answer. And there's also limitations because, as I said, remember how these things work. They take in billions of pieces of input, and those input are not real time. It is not accessing the internet in real time. They're accessing what it's been fed at a particular point in time. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when you see ChatGPT, GPT stands for generative pre-trained, which means it is not accessing things real time. It has been pre-trained with a certain set of data. So asking questions like, should I invest in this stock, is a really bad question to ask, because even the most up-to-date models I don't think have been updated since the beginning of the year. And here we are pretty close to halfway through the year, and it's just not going to have relevant recent data.
I think that the other problem with these financial type questions is that, and I've thought about this a lot as somebody who is asked a lot of financial questions, right? That there are two very distinct types. There are the questions that have an answer, and there are questions that don't have an answer, right? There's the what's the best credit card if you want to earn miles on American Airlines? Very easy to answer, right? There's a limited universe. I can do the research. I can figure out which has the biggest bonus right now. I can do that and I can be right. What stock should I buy? Or should I buy this stock? I don't, these are predictive questions where it's, if you're right, you're lucky. If you're right, people may think that you're a genius for a short period of time, but you're not right because you know something that they don't. It's an impossible question. And I would think that these models, as you said, being trained on past information, don't have a shot of getting these right either.
Right. And your the questions that can your dichotomy of the questions that can be answered and those that can't do track to a certain extent the categorization that I put out there of factual versus analytical. But here's the thing that people need to recognize too, Gene. Even the things that are factual, many of these models get wrong. I'll give you an example. Somebody documented not long after ChatGPT came out that they had asked ChatGPT who holds the world record for crossing the English Channel on foot. Well, that should be a factual type question.
Right.
It did not come back and say nobody, because that's not possible. It didn't understand that. And so in its attempt to come up with an answer, regardless of whether or not it was true, it came back with an answer and actually wasn't a bad answer. It actually said that a former swimmer of the English Channel record had done it in some period of time that looked fairly reasonable compared to what it would have cost. But it should have been a factual question and came back and said, nobody, because it's never been done and can't be done. But the models don't understand that, and they are trained to give an answer based on what it can pull together. The other thing I would throw out there, Gene, as a future worry for folks is that because the internet is the source for a lot of these open models like a ChatGPT, I think we're going to see a lot of fraudulent attempts of people and companies and fraudsters intentionally loading bad data, information up into the internet so that it spoofs and puts bad information out there. That hasn't been really a problem just yet because it pulls from people haven't done that prior to the release of these types of tools. But increasingly, we're going to see some really bad actors, trying to create bad data and pollute. I think there's a term for it, and I'm just kind of missing out, forgetting what the name of that term is.
We got a question from Haley, who is wondering about robo investing and if it's getting better at how it's using AI, and wondering, is that a dependable way to invest these days? Are the models continually getting better? And as you answer that, I mean, I think one of the things about AI, one of the things about robo advisors is that before it tells you how to invest your money, it asks you a lot of questions. It gives you a lot of prompts so that it does have a more detailed picture of who you are, how old you are, what your goals are, what you want, how much risk you're willing to take. That all factors in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize too that while a lot of these robo investing tools do use machine learning, other artificial intelligence technologies, they're not ChatGPT in the to the extent that they are private models from particular vendors who have developed these models themselves. And for better or worse, there's very little transparency from an investor perspective to understand what was data was it trained on, what are the assumptions that are going into that. Now, with a Chat GPT, a Gemini, other public models that are out there, you can ask those questions to try to ferret out the answers, but even some of them are going to fall short as well of giving you the insights. Last point I want to make on this, and it's very counterintuitive, but there was a study done by some academics who tried to evaluate whether or not these large language public models like a ChatGPT and Gemini were good at constructing investment portfolios for consumers. Basically, they created 64 different portfolios based on different profiles of investors, and actually found that the public models did very well. And in fact, what was super counterintuitive about this is they actually found that the what's called foundation models. So the large language models are pre-trained based on a foundation model, which is a larger model that then becomes more specific to a certain set of questions. And then typically, investment firms will actually take the large language models and build even more specific models. Now, you would think that a model that was specifically designed to do investment portfolio construction and analysis would do well. But what the academics found was that the foundation, the general models, actually did better. So to Haley and everybody else wondering about that, I'm sorry, it's just a confusing answer. You would think that the robo investing tools from specific investment firms would be more specific and higher performing because they're designed to do just that. But the academics actually found the exact opposite, that the more generic models perform better. And that might be because they're taking in a wider range of inputs. Hard to say why that was the case.
When we think about where we should be using AI, you have said that it's a difference between forward-looking solutions and backward-looking solutions. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that the tools, there's two things we got to look at here, Gene. I think is one is understanding what should I do, and the other being do it. And the tools that we've had historically up till now have been very good at looking backwards and helping us determine what happened. Do the analysis, crunch the data, tell me what happened. And we've always had the intermediaries, the banks, the investment firms, the advisors, analyze that to tell us what to do. But what we now have is a set of tools that will combine all of that and do it for us. This is where I think that folks are not understanding what these generative AI tools are and can do. It isn't simply about getting advice on how to construct a portfolio. It's about getting the advice on how to construct a portfolio and then telling the tools, go invest the money, open up an account, place the trade, buy this, and then monitor the portfolio over time to see how it's doing and make the adjustments to stay within a certain performance range or to meet a certain set of criteria. The large investment companies have developed programs over the past 40 years to do that for themselves. Now we as individual retail investors and consumers now have the power to do that with these tools in our own hands. And amazingly, for like $10, $20 a month to subscribe to ChatGPT, or to pay a little bit extra for some of the plug-in tools that are available with some of these large language models. So, the focus around, and I know there's a lot of folks say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to use it, I don't know, there's no transparency into these things. And those are all valid arguments. But what we crave most as consumers is convenience, things that save us time. And you're going to see, and everybody listening is going to see, that these tools are going to do these things for us, monitor, manage these things, report back to us. We can override them if we don't want to make the investment or the trade or whatever it might be. But to have something that's in place that actually does all this hard work for us, and it's not hard work, it's just it's work.
It's
And
tedious
we
work.
It's tedious. It's for us. Why don't do it? It's why nobody does it, except for a few of the folks listening in.
Let me dig in a little bit more, because I think this stuff is almost rote to you. It's not rote to me, and I don't think it's rote to some of the people who are listening. You said you could upload your portfolio, you could upload your transactions, your bank account, and then you could ask the program, you could ask ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever version you're paying for, close the accounts that I'm not using, or find where I'm spending more than I should be spending. How do you actually do that?
Well, it can be done sometimes with simply the ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever it might be. You can simply, I'll give you an example of this. A buddy of mine is an entrepreneur in the financial technology space. He and a buddy created a company 15 years ago at this point, maybe even more. That's typically called PFM, Personal Financial Management Tool. They shifted their strategy early on and sold the tool into banks, who integrated it into their online banking platforms and digital banking platforms over time. And it's one of those tools that enabled people to do budgeting, and over time gave them the capability to categorize and analyze their expenses. I don't know if people do that who are listening in, but they probably have found that most of these tools are far from perfect in really categorizing expenses. Well, my buddy a couple of months ago literally uploaded his, a quarter's worth of his spending data to ChatGPT, basically uploaded a spreadsheet that listed all of his expenses, and asked it to categorize his expenses and analyze his spending. And within minutes, he said it came back with a perfect analysis of the expenditures and where the money was going and the categorization. Something they had been working on for 10, 15 years, and this tool just did it perfectly within a matter of minutes. So how it does that, I couldn't even answer that question. But you can give it data. You can upload. One tech entrepreneur, as a publicity stunt, advertised that he was going to turn over the complete management of his financial life to generative AI tools and technologies, ChatGPT and some of the other plugins that are available. And the first thing he did was told it to connect to all of his accounts, and gave it his password and user ID for all the accounts. Now, for you and I and everybody listening, this is not a good idea.
No.
You really don't want to do that. Because once you upload information to ChatGPT or any of these other tools, it saves that. It captures all of that stuff. And so you don't want to do that. But it was a publicity stunt, and he did that. And then using various tools, sometimes ChatGPT, sometimes with other plugins that work with ChatGPT. One of the things he did was ask it to find a subscription that he had that he could cancel. And it came back and said, we see you have a Planet Fitness. Would you like us to cancel it? And he said, yes. And so what the tool does isn't just analyze the spending and identify a subscription. It then went out and wrote an email to Planet Fitness indicating we want, the tech entrepreneur, want to cancel this subscription, and takes care of it. Another thing he asked us to do was to find an expense that he had incurred that he could get a refund on. It analyzed his expenses and identified that he had spent $35 to connect to Wi-Fi on a flight from New York to London. It came back and asked him, did it work? That was an interesting question for a AI tool to ask, right? But there was a reason why they asked that, because when he said no, it didn't work, it wrote a letter to American Airlines citing the legal code that prevents companies from selling defective goods and services, and asked for its $35 back. Then he said, go analyze my monthly bills and find some fees that you could dispute. And it found some fees on his doesn't matter. It was a Verizon account, and found some, junk fees, and came back and said, we found $50. And he said, no, go find some more. And it found another $50, and reached out and communicated, reached out, it wrote emails to Verizon, getting the funds, the charges refunded. And so this isn't simply about analysis and recommendation and advice, Gene. It's about tools that do things for us. And I think that's what's so exciting about this. Now, clearly, there are some downsides and some limitations right now, because please do not give these tools your user IDs and passwords.
Right.
Do not upload your transaction and investment histories. Don't do any of that. But those capabilities are already there. We just got to get over the hump of how to protect the data.
What about the ethics of it all? When we talk about financial planning and financial planners, we often talk about this fiduciary duty that they have to act in the best financial interest of their clients. If someone were to use AI for financial planning, what kind of advice are they going to get? Is it going to pass the smell test?
Well, it's going to be very dependent on which model or tool they're asking the question from, and how that tool is trained, and how that tool is, being tooled and tweaked. It seems very unlikely to me that financial institutions are going to put truly neutral, customer advice oriented, what's right for the customer tools, when they know that what the right thing might be to tell a customer. It's not even about investing necessarily, but the right thing would be to say, Gene, you move your savings from this 0.1% interest rate account to an account with this other provider at 5%. That would be the right thing to do. That would be the best piece of advice, right? But I don't see a lot of financial institutions harming, they have a business model conflict, and I don't know that they're going to do that. On the other hand, there will be other providers out there, and it could be an Apple, a Google. I even think Klarna is a great example of a company who wants to be the independent, neutral provider of advice to consumers on what to do, will develop models that will make those recommendations. I had a conversation with the CEO of Klarna a couple months ago when he was telling me that this was the goal that he wanted. And it wasn't just about financial planning, but it was about providing the best advice on which product and which providers to get various products from. And I was like, that's a huge conflict with your business model. He said, it is today, but we want to be doing what's right for the end consumer, and we'll figure out ways to monetize that in the end. So it's a wide world out there. It's generally the business model that's going to be the bigger, I think, barrier to this, Gene, not so much the technology itself. The technology capabilities are there. The question is, will firms and companies enable that to go straight to the consumers when it's clearly detrimental to their own business?
On this show, we talk a lot about issues of retirement. We talk about protected income and making sure that you get the most from your Social Security, for example, making sure that you take the money that you have saved for retirement and you use it to support yourself in the right way throughout your life, using different tools and different financial products. When it comes specifically to the challenges facing people when they are living a longer lifespan and have to take the money that they've saved and make it last as long as they do, is AI going to be helpful there? Are all of these additional tools and capabilities going to help us solve for those things that will keep us financially healthy for as long as we live?
With the way you worded that, my answer is no. Will it solve for it? Absolutely not. I don't think that there's, any panacea out there that takes care and solves all our problems. What what I think is really happening and the way people should be looking at this is, and it's funny, I've always hated the term democratizing anything because I'm always like, well, I don't even know what that means, democratizing. But in this case, I think it is a democratizing the tools. These tools and technologies have been around, have been in the machine learning type tools, the conversational AI, less so the generative AI tools. Have been around for a while, but they've only really been able to been harnessed by large corporations who have the resources to hire people to understand them, build the tools, use them, and deploy them. And because of that investment, they want to see a return on that investment. But what's happening is with the emergence of these generative AI tools, which incorporate machine learning capabilities and this ability to generate things, whether it's answers or generate text or generate pictures and charts and analysis and all this kinds of things, it is putting the power of these tools into the hands of individuals at a much more reasonable cost, close to zero in many cases. Now, will it solve the problems, solve these challenges? Absolutely not. But it will provide them with better information, better tools, and I think very importantly, what I keep wanting to get across is more convenience in getting the job done at less work and less effort. But will it solve it? No, it's never going to solve it. It's never going to be the panacea that takes care of all of these things. And I think first and foremost is because we're human and we simply cannot. First of all, we don't like to be told what to do. And if the answer is stop spending so much money going out to eat, and that's where I get my enjoyment, I'm simply not going to do that. If it's telling me, stop smoking and stop drinking, well, listen, we've been telling that to people for years, and have they listened? No. So it isn't going to solve the problem because it can't be the policeman that forces you to do things, but it can provide better tools to analyze what you should do, tell you what to do, and very importantly, actually do it for you. But there are still going to be limitations in the execution. That's my take on it, Gene.
Last question. In your column in Forbes, you predict things. You write about predictions. You've done predictions for 2023, 2024. When you look out over the next couple of years, what does this world look like? How does the way that we as consumers handle our personal finances change?
Gene, there's a picture I wish I could share with you right now. I believe that this picture captures what the future of financial services looks like. I'm going to describe it to you, and with apologies for the younger listeners out there who might not get this old baby boomer reference. How many of you remember the old Rock'em Sock'em Robots toy? Remember
Me.
the robots, right? Gene, that's the future of financial services. It's the consumer's bots versus the provider's bots. And the question that remains to be answered is who provides the consumer with their bots, tools, and models? Is that going to be one and the same as the financial provider, who is going to increasingly be moving towards having their bots, their artificial intelligence tools be the intermediary? Because they don't want to use humans anymore to do that. It's not just a cost factor. It's a It's a delivery ability to ask a chatbot a question about something that can instantly reference millions of interactions to come back with an answer is far superior than a person who at best might have 30 years of experience and ask and get a good question. But more and more they don't have the people with 30 years of experience. But now we as consumers, as investors, as banking customers, as insurance shoppers are going to have those ability to have those tools. The question is, who's going to provide those questions, but provide those tools? But that's where we're going, bot to bot. And it's going to be the rock'em sock'em robots.
I'm not going to be able to get that image out of my mind. Ron Shevlin, thank you so much. If our listeners want more from you, where would you send them?
To Forbes.com/fintech. My blog is called the Fintech Snark Tank. I'm writing there, but if you're on LinkedIn, Ron Shevlin, love to connect with you.
Thank you so much. And if you'd like more information from the Alliance for Lifetime Income, I hope you'll subscribe to the newsletter. You can go to protectedincome.org/subscribe. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you, Ron, and have a good day.